Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is Barbara Talks Some More. My name is Barbara and my original channel is called Barbara Talks. So be sure to subscribe to both of my channels. Over here I go over public figure natal chart readings as well as synastry readings and honestly whatever else comes through to talk about. And on my original channel I go over all things to do with astrology. So if you guys are interested in learning even more about your natal charts, check out that channel. I have playlists over there. You guys can select what you guys would like to learn about and then find your placement underneath the playlist. And also I talk about metaphysical concepts over there as well, and I have a metaphysical playlist, so be sure to check out both channels if you're interested in this world of astrology. Now the thing is, with synastry readings and natal chart readings, it's also always good to look at these aspects and sometimes also related to, let's say, your own lives. You guys can also learn through other people to learn about, let's say, yourselves and your relationships, but there is a but here. It's not always going to, let's say, play out in the same way. Okay, so let's say some things that we talk about today, they might not necessarily play out that way in your own natal charts. But of course, you know, this universe is all about numbers and patterns, and certain patterns are definitely themes in certain types of relationships. I will be getting into that today. So today we're going to be going over Mariacallas and Aristotle Onassis is natal charts. Okay, so maybe you guys know about these people, maybe you don't. I wasn't familiar with them until a few days ago when somebody told me about Mariacallas. They told me her life story because that person watched a movie about her and I had just hooked into her energy because basically they told me about the love affair between these two. Okay, so she was an opera singer, very well known during her period of time. Okay, and then Aristotle was a billionaire businessman. So that period of time he was the most wealthiest man in the world. So it was so interesting because when this person told me about their love story, or I guess star-crossed lovers love story, we can look at it that way as well. Basically, you know, they told me that, you know, he crossed out, and then I was just like looking as usual, looking at their natal charts, and then I noticed that he crossed out and then she crossed out 2 years after him, and then I was like, oh my goodness, I think that she literally died of a broken heart. It says she had a heart attack. And you know, some of these videos that I quickly watched just to get a better recap of the story between these two individuals. And again, maybe there's other information out there about them. This is just going to be based off of what I have seen online, like about these two individuals and their love story. So you know, the story basically goes here that these two got together, okay, and they both had other partners. So we're going to see that in the natal chart as well, okay. They had other partners and she fell madly in love with him, which to me, the story, the more that I heard about it, the more it sounded like love bombing, okay. But of course, back then they didn't know that, okay? It's like she was born in the 1920s, he's born in 1906. So anyways, she fell in love with him. And again, the way the story goes is she dropped her career and everything in hopes of getting together with him. Her husband at the time said that he could forgive her. She was basically like, no, I'm so in love with this man, and dropped him. And then with him, what happened was that his wife found out about them two, and then it was like a whole public humiliation thing. I'm paraphrasing here, so if you guys want to learn more, like check out the videos for yourselves or like Google it, or however you guys find your information, okay? So yes, the wife dropped him, and then Maria was kind of hopeful that him and Maria were gonna get together, but then they didn't. And then he got together with Jackie Kennedy, which is like this whole side quest story, because like I knew about Jackie Kennedy, but I didn't know that, you know, after her man died, she got together with him. So there's like a lot of love triangles going on here. But anyway, so then he did not want to be with Maria, unfortunately, and I think she held out for almost like that entire period of time. I don't know how long this was after, but I think she was like secretly hoping and wishing. Oh, and another part of the story too that I saw in one of these videos, again, all of this obviously is allegedly. I don't know, you know, if someone made this up. Plus these people, like, it's from so long ago, right? So who knows? But anyways, allegedly, okay, she actually was pregnant with his kid and he didn't want to like take on that kid or like claim the kid or something of that sort. So when she gave birth to the kid, that kid died like 2 months after. Like, such a tragedy. So yes, I'm sure there's more information in the movie about her, and I'm sure it's going to be more of a focus on her life. But you know, this just really intrigued me because again, when I looked at their natal charts as I was hearing the story, I just found it so interesting that she crossed out 2 years after him, and apparently she was one of the final people who saw him. And also, as the story goes, she said that she's gonna love him endlessly for, you know, the end of time, which, there you go, binding words, right? Words are spells, so they're gonna incarnate again together, okay, I'm sure, because this is an unresolved love story. Now, you know, I found this interesting. First of all, I found it sad because, you know, it's like she literally died of a broken heart. You know, some people said that she was like doing pharmaceuticals and all these things, and then that was what led to her heart attack, that she had like a whole breakdown and so on and so forth. And then of course that she died 2 years after him. So it's like, to me, right away when I heard the story and I looked them both up and I saw, you know, date of birth, date of death, I was like, yeah, she died literally because he crossed out. Because like she was probably holding on to the hope that they're probably going to get together eventually. And again, obviously, as you know, I don't know these people. Okay, this is a long time ago. Like she was born literally over 100 years ago. And you know, these videos are for educational purposes only. Everything is alleged. This is just based on my own opinion and speculation. And like I mentioned earlier, if you guys have some of these aspects either in your own natal charts or in synastry with another individual, it doesn't always have to mean it's going to play out that way. But there definitely is a theme here that I've noticed when it comes to these affair types of situations, you know, side people, you know, side chicks, side dudes, so on and so forth types of situations. I have definitely noticed a theme in the synastry. And, you know, it's like a combination of energies, okay? And for those of you who are interested, the combination usually is Venus-Uranus, Venus-Neptune, Pluto's always involved, and also Lilith. And the Lilith is usually either going to the Venus or to the Mars. That's what I'm looking for. When I see this combination of all of this, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is the recipe for some sort of affair type of situation. Hidden love affair, we can't be together, those types of stories. So getting into both of their birth dates here, okay, I have both her chart open, his chart open, and then the synastry between the two of them. For her, it was interesting. They had two different birthdays for her. And who knows, again, maybe none of this is accurate, right? We're going to go based off of this if it is accurate. And they have her birth time, which is like, I'm sure this is someone guessing this, okay? But it kind of fits with her chart and her personality. Okay, they put her at 6 a.m., which makes her Scorpio rising. So the birth, you know, days here are either the 3rd of December or the 2nd December. I think she's born on the 3rd, okay? Because when I add also her life path number is also 3. So she's a double 3 if she's born on the 3rd. If she's born on the 2nd, she would be a double 2, okay? In terms of her being a double 3, this makes sense. Opera singer, voice, throat chakra, that's part of her purpose, and it's coming up twice, okay? And also, her overall life story is also quite sad as well, okay? So if any of you are interested, again, it's either going to be in the movie or, you know, you guys can kind of do your own research to find out about her whole life story and basically what took place. Anyways, so I'm pretty sure that her birthday is the 3rd of December, 1923, and then instead of the 2nd, okay? And then they have her here at 6 a.m., they have her here also as New York, New York. So we're going to go based off of that. Okay, maybe it's accurate, maybe it's not. But again, also the only thing that's different between the two as well, okay, in terms of the placements here, is the moon, okay? So if she was born on the 2nd, she would have been a Virgo moon. If she's born on the 3rd, she would have been a Libra moon, okay? And I think she's a Libra moon because she's very, very pretty, okay? And then it kind of works because in both of these charts, she would be a Scorpio rising, okay, if she was born at 6 a.m. And the Libra with Scorpio combination is that whole potential of being in love triangles situation and sometimes the hidden love affairs and, you know, being the side person in another story. Not just that, because, you know, the unhealed Libra energy or when Libra is in the shadow, they really go into the energy of wanting to be chosen. And then again, in combination with the Scorpio energy, you know, it tends to sometimes play out in this way. Obviously, not everyone who has this, okay? But based off of what we know, I'm going to go with this, that she's born on the 3rd and that she's a Libra moon, okay? That resonates more. And then for him, what's interesting here, because I was looking at their charts here, so we don't have his rising sign, right? But based off of their story, I'm pretty sure, okay, that her Venus, which is in Capricorn here, okay, that her Venus would go into his 12th house. So for him, in terms of his birthday, they basically had him as the 20th of January, 1906. And he was born in Smyrna in Turkey, which is present-day Izmir. And for him, what's interesting for him, okay, so he could either be a Scorpio moon if he's born anytime before 12 p.m. If he's born after 12 p.m., he's a Sag moon. And as soon as I heard about the story and I see his picture, I'm like, this is Sagittarius behavior to me, okay, with this whole multiples, this side person, that side person, juggling, so on and so forth. Okay? And this is also the Bachelor moon, by the way. Like, these are not the types of people that want to necessarily settle down. Like, it's interesting. He has his Venus in Capricorn, which is the energy that does want to settle down, okay? And the whole reason I think he was a very quote-unquote successful businessman, Sun in Capricorn, 29th degree, Mercury, Venus, all in Capricorn, okay? Also, in his own personal natal chart, okay, he also has Mercury square Pluto as well, okay? That's that relentless energy, especially when you have Scorpio combination with Capricorn, or even if you have, let's say, like the Mars-Pluto aspect taking place here, okay, it's like this energy can be relentless, okay? They'll do anything to get to the top. And that was the other part of the story that I saw in one of those videos where they said that, quote unquote, his money was cursed because all of these people around him had some kind of issue if he gave them money and so on and so forth. In the story, they say that back in Greece, they basically had like this like story about him where they were like saying that his money is cursed. And I'm sure they're saying it's cursed because it probably came from somewhere, you know, nefarious. And I mean, he is a billionaire, right? You know how they say there's no ethical billionaires, right? So anyways, so apparently everybody that he would give his money to, like something like negative would happen, okay? So it's so interesting that that also came up in the story here. But yes, so it's all this Capricorn energy, especially the sun being in Capricorn as well, especially at that 29th degree. Definitely. Now, the thing is, why I think that he is potentially Capricorn rising, okay? Her Venus is in Capricorn, okay? For her, okay, her first man, or I don't know if it's her first ever man, but her first husband, okay, or at least the one that's announced, okay, in the story, when you look her up, he is 27 years older than her. And then this guy, okay, Aristotle, is also a bunch of years older than her, okay? So she got that Venus in Capricorn. So you'll see that a lot of the time for people who have either Venus in Capricorn, especially women, okay? And also she has Venus sextile Saturn, okay? You'll see that a lot of the time for these individuals. They have older friends, older lovers, okay? They have people around them that are older as well. Not to mention she also has Mars conjunct Saturn, okay? So if we look at it in terms of relationships, that'll be the Venus, and it can also be women, okay? And then the Mars is going to be men, okay? So Mars conjunct Saturn, she's literally into older men. And that probably stems from, and by the way, I'm not a psychologist, that's another one of my disclaimers, but there's also something here going on with the father. I don't know that part of the story, just based off of like the synopsis of the movie. Like it kind of sounded like she was like with the mother, or like the mother has separated from the father. So there's the lack of the father figure basically going on here. And also she has that wound, okay? That's what I was looking for too. She has Chiron Trine the sun in her chart, okay? So this is the father wound. So for the father wound, you're going to look at Chiron sun aspects, Chiron Saturn aspects, sometimes even Chiron Mars, okay? Those are all the masculine energies in a chart, and that doesn't matter. It could be in the man chart or in the woman's chart. And then in Aristotle's chart, he also has Chiron conjunct the sun, okay? So, you know, with him, there's something going on with the father here. That's kind of like a side part of the story, because I was also hooking into this energy. I feel like either I'm not sure if he came from any, because I don't know his background, but because the sun is in Capricorn, he definitely felt the need to prove himself to the father, okay? Because the sun is in Capricorn, to make the money, to elevate the financial status even further and higher, okay? Because sometimes people are born into wealthy families, right? And they don't do anything with that money. They literally just like frolic through the fields, you know? But other people, okay, when you have Capricorn in the chart, they're here to elevate the social and financial status of the family. So whether the money is there or whether the money is not there, doesn't really matter, because they're here to basically take it to that next level even higher, okay? And then you have Chiron sextile the moon, okay? And this is the mother wound. So this is another thing that I've seen in toxic relationships play out, okay? Now, again, there has to be a combination of energies here, okay? Just this energy playing out on its own isn't always going to go into the shadow, but I've seen this, let's say, again, it's one of these circumstances where Pluto is involved or something of that sort, even Neptune, okay? And then I notice, let's say the woman has the father wound and then the man has the mother wound, right? And then in combination, let's say with Pluto, let's say with Neptune, like those tend to be like very toxic, like relationships, especially when the two people are like locked in, which is the Plutonian dynamics that I talk about all the time, okay? Which, by the way, you guys, if you guys would like your own natal chart reading, progressed natal chart reading, synastry reading, okay, mini synastry reading, or mini natal chart reading, you guys can feel free to send me an email. So when you go on my website, which is in the description box below, you guys can select which kind of reading you guys would like. An email window should pop up and you guys can send me an email and we will go from there. Today's video, like this video reading that I'm doing, is closer to my mini natal chart readings or mini synastry readings, okay, where I kind of go over whatever jumps out at me first versus my in-depth readings, okay, which are usually longer and I go over everything in the natal chart. Same thing with my synastry readings as well. Okay, back to the natal charts as well. So in her chart here, so she, you know, again, based off of the synopsis of the movie, apparently she was known to be like eccentric, different, outside of the box, okay, that she was like very eccentric. That's kind of like the word they used to basically describe her, and that's the Sag energy, okay? Sag tends to be eccentric, and also she has Sun square Uranus as well, taking place in her natal chart too, okay? She even has Mercury square Uranus too, okay? So this is someone who is different and ahead of the time, okay? There was even another video, again, like a little short video that I saw of her talking in an interview where they were like asking about like marriage and so on and so forth, and just like her views on everything were very different, especially for that period of time. But at the same time, she did have a certain aspect of herself that was very much traditional, because someone asked her in one of the interviews that I saw too, and again, it's just a snippet from the interview, I didn't watch the entire thing, but someone basically asked her, they were like, hey, your like opera career kind of like, you know, took a hit and you stopped taking these contracts and so on and so forth as soon as you met Aristotle, and they were basically like, why did you kind of give everything up for a man? And then she was like, well, you know, that's kind of what you quote unquote do, and that was like the perspective, right? Like these people were literally like living during, you know, let's say the 1940s and so on and so forth. That was the perspective back then, okay? So it's unfortunate, because to me this is just kind of like the codependency demon that's like hooked in here, where she like dropped everything as soon as she met her man, okay? But at the same time, I'm like, okay, I understand, because that's the time that you guys were living in. So yes, but I was curious to see what's going on in the synastry between the two of them, okay? So I'm sure you guys get an idea here in terms of what's going on with the story. And again, if you guys want more information, you guys can look it up online. Now, what's interesting here is the first thing that I noticed between the two of them, okay, is a lot of his planets are aspecting her moon, okay? There's almost nothing going on with his moon, okay? From her planets to his. Actually, there is literally nothing going on with his moon. I'm looking at it now. There's nothing going on with her planets going to his moon, okay? So that's the first thing. So he definitely was not emotionally invested, okay? At all. Oh yes, and that's the other thing that I wanted to say. I think that he was a Capricorn rising, okay? With Capricorn in the 12th house as well, okay? So that's what I think. Because her Venus is in Capricorn, I think her Venus went into his 12th house, okay? I hope that makes sense, because you'll see this a lot of the time in unrequited love stories. You'll see this a lot of the time where it's like, again, the Venus person is like obsessed with the other person or like super in love with them, but like the other person, which is usually the 12th house person, which in this case will be him. And it's just speculation, but if he did have Capricorn rising in 12th house occupied by Capricorn, so let's say he had an interception taking place and this is in the Placidus tropical system, it would put a lot of his Capricorn energy into the first house, which I can totally see, okay? I could totally see that taking place because, again, you know, he would have, let's say, the sun. I mean, it depends how it would end up aligning. Let's say he did have that interception taking place, okay? But, you know, if anything, he would have, like, let's say the sun and the Venus, let's say, in the first house, maybe the Mercury, because it's at 10 degrees, it would go, let's say, in the 12th house, or maybe they would all go into the first. Doesn't really matter. Let's say he did have all this energy taking place in here. Like, again, that's the entrepreneurial energy when you have that first house energy taking place in combination with Capricorn. And he's got that Mars square Pluto taking place as well. So that's why I think like he's probably a Capricorn rising. Okay, guys, so I'm just playing around with the times here just to kind of like get an idea if he was a Capricorn rising. So if he was a Capricorn rising, he will be a Sagittarius moon. So that just confirms my theory even more. And in general, the way he looks to me is also like Capricorn energy. And again, his features to me are also Sag because it's like big, you know what I mean, on his face. And then again, I'm playing around with the numbers here. You know, let's say he is a Capricorn rising. Let's say he has that interception taking place. So let's say he is a double Capricorn. So as in Capricorn first house, Capricorn 12th house. Now this is where it gets interesting. Let's say the sun goes into the first. In this particular case, the Mercury could potentially go into the 12th, the Venus could potentially go into the 12th house as well, and the Uranus could potentially go into the 12th house as well. So I find that really, really interesting because I could see his Mercury being in the 12th because that could be kind of like the sweet talker type of vibe, but I could also see his Venus being in the 12th because that could be like all of these entanglements he has with all of these women, which is like a lot of past life things to clear. But anyways, this is just speculation just because of the intensity of like this, like, you know, love she had for him and the fact that it was like very much unrequited, even though like, again, there was some things online where apparently he was like, oh, she was my one true love, blah, blah, blah. Who knows if it's true and so on and so forth. Because the way that I see these things is like, if he really felt that I wanted to be with her, he would have been with her. You know what I mean? So anyways, because it's so intense from her side, I think it's her Venus going into his 12th. So for sure, I think he's got that interception taking place, Capricorn rising, or like 12th house for sure, I feel like is Capricorn for her Venus to go into his 12th house. Okay. So that's one of the things that I also noticed, okay, here. And like I mentioned, nothing aspecting his moon from her side. So there's no emotional connection from him. Also, again, let's say her time is accurate, okay? And the whole reason it could be accurate is because, again, not only what I mentioned earlier about her having a Libra moon, Scorpio rising, but also because that Scorpio rising, like just the way her features are and that she's so good on a screen, right? And it's like when you have Libra and Scorpio taking place in a natal chart, it's like Libra makes you good looking, but then Scorpio makes you like attractive. It gives you that sex appeal. It's like the energy that people want to watch. They're like almost like hypnotized, okay, by your energies, that magnetic field. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard that about Scorpio risings, and you'll see a lot of the time Scorpio risings do end up in these fields, okay, where they are, again, singing, acting, okay, where they are, you know, modeling, anything of the sort, okay, because again, they portray that sexual energy very well on a screen, like it comes out in pictures and on screens and so on and so forth. I could see her being a Scorpio rising, but again, you know, we'll just kind of leave it up to, you know, take it with a grain of salt type of vibe, okay. But let's say she is, a lot of his planets go into her second house, okay, Sun in the second, Venus in the second, Mercury in the second, Uranus in the second house as well. So having all of these planets going into her second house, he sees a lot of value in her, right? So there's definitely like, you know, a lot of value that he sees in her, okay? So that's there. And also another thing that I noticed too is that for him, his Venus, okay, basically sextiles her ascendant. So from a man's Venus to a woman's ascendant, it's like his ideal physical type, right? So he definitely had a lot of attraction to her in terms of the physical sense, and he probably saw a lot of value in her as well, okay? But the emotional element wasn't there, and that's probably why, okay, it didn't keep him around, right? Or like he didn't stick around because there was no emotional element there. There's also a lot of sexual attraction between the two of them as well, okay? On her side and his side, they both have Mars trine Pluto here, okay? And by the way, you guys, I look up to 10 degrees of an orb. Some people look up to a tighter orb. Sometimes some people look up to, an even bigger orb as well, okay? But I look up to 10 degrees of an orb. So, when the orb is 10 degrees, we have that aspect basically taking place for both sides. Both of their Plutos trine each other's Mars, basically, okay? So that's like the sexual attraction. And, it's interesting. I found it interesting, actually. Both of them were born during a waning moon. So this is definitely something super karmic. As per usual, everything is karmic. And again, if her moon really is in Libra, 6 degrees, okay, and we really were generous, let's say, with the orb, just because of the level, let's say, of her obsession toward him. She publicly talked about this, okay, in interviews and so on and so forth. Like, she did not hide it at all. If we really open up the orb to that 15-degree mark, right, her moon would basically trine his Pluto, okay? And that's that obsession energy, basically, that is taking place there. So it's really, really interesting because another thing that's taking place too is like from her side, a lot of her planets are aspecting either his sun or his Mars, which again, it's more so feeding into his ego as well, okay? So there's that part of the story too. But the main element here, I would say, that's missing is the fact that nothing is aspecting his moon from her side. Okay, so there was no emotional connection there to kind of keep him around. Personally, I think he love bombed her. I think he, thought that she was attractive. He probably really liked the fact that she was into him. Okay, and that she was kind of like obsessed with him. Like, I think he definitely liked that attention. Okay. Oh, and the other thing I want to talk about too is her Venus, okay, is conjuncting his Uranus. So I see this a lot. Okay. A lot of people these days are going to talk about the Venus conjunct Uranus being alternative relationships. But the way that I see the Venus-Uranus, okay, I feel like a lot of people don't fully understand Uranus as a planet. The way that I see Uranus sometimes in a lot of these combinations, okay, there has to be other combinations taking place in the chart here, okay? So in this particular case, it's like his Uranus, which is generational, comes through to disrupt her love life, which is her Venus, okay? So it's like an unexpected relationship. Usually, I've seen this a lot of the time in affairs, okay? I've seen this a lot of the time in side chick, side dude types of scenarios. I talked about that on my other page as well, okay? I've seen this a lot because the Uranus person comes through, okay? Kind of like a shock, okay? Or the Venus person isn't expecting it, so that's why she's so affected. It's her love life that gets affected, even though for him, like, his love life, quote unquote, was affected too. But for her, it affects her world more. Does that make sense? Because it's her personal planet, okay? So, that's kind of what's happening here. And then also his Neptune opposes her Venus. So this is what was also kind of keeping her trickling along, keeping her kind of hooked, is the Venus opposing Neptune, okay? You see this a lot of the time, especially in combination with the Mars Pluto, okay? And then you have Venus Neptune. You'll see this a lot of the time in these dynamics where, the person thinks the other person is their twin flame, their one true love. You will also see this sometimes in abusive relationships as well, abusive dynamics, okay? Because, the Mars Pluto can sometimes, in, let's say, the harder aspects, bring through, yes, a lot of sexual energy, but it can sometimes get very abusive and trigger warning, sometimes violent as well. And then Neptune and those dynamics tends to be very forgiving, or you put the person on a pedestal. So she said that in one of the interviews that I saw, that she put him on a pedestal. That's her Venus opposing her Neptune, okay? So that's basically what is going on there, kind of what hooked her. And then also my speculation, of course, of her Venus potentially going into his 12th house, which is the unrequited love. Now, it's really sad because in the end, she literally died of a broken heart. So this is really interesting, and it's really interesting on that soul level because these two are going to incarnate again, okay? Because this is kind of unresolved, and it's unresolved on her side is really what it is. And because she said, those, again, words or spells that she's going to love him endlessly, until the end of time. And the same thing when she went to go visit him in the hospital, like, someone told her, I don't know who it was now, I can't remember from like the videos that I saw, but someone told her, like, when Jackie wasn't around, okay, which was, I guess, his wife at the time, that she could come. And, she came and told him that, and so on and so forth. So it says, the other tricky part here is they do have Venus sextile Saturn taking place too, okay? It's his Saturn that sextiles her Venus. And actually this happens from her side to his too. So her Saturn squares his Venus, okay? So it's like, you'll see this in longer term relationships, sometimes even marriages. So maybe that's why she held on to that as well. But sometimes in dynamics like this, okay, if you get involved, especially if you get sexually involved with the other person, you will see this in extended affair types of situations because now Saturn is prolonging it, okay? So you'll see this a lot of the time in those people who are involved in some sort of third party situation, okay? where they kind of got involved with the other person too soon, while the other person was maybe still with their partner and so on and so forth. And the other person's kind of stringing them along, whatever it is. And it's like the Saturn is tricky in this dynamic, because Saturn's kind of prolonging it. So they stay in these dynamics longer than they should because they got involved. Let's say it's the Pluto, okay, that hooked the other person, Pluto, Mars, right? The sexual chemistry and so on and so forth, right? Neptune comes into play because of the illusions and the delusions, right? The hoping, sitting, waiting, wishing, so on and so forth. That's Neptune. And the shadow, of course. All these energies can definitely play out in the divine. But the tricky thing here is it's the Venus-Uranus, which is the affair, and also they have Lilith and Mars, and there's also Lilith-Venus taking place as well, but I'll get to that in just a second. So that's what's tricky in these dynamics, because now Saturn's prolonging this. It's prolonging the affair. It's prolonging the hoping, waiting, wishing, almost limerence type of energy, because it's almost like the person can kind of hook into even this alternative reality, okay, where the two people potentially end up together, or they're like holding out for it. And that's kind of what happened in this dynamic, unfortunately for her, okay, is really, really what it is. And a lot of that comes back down to self-worth. And it's unfortunate because this is why I think he kind of like love bombed her, because he did see a lot of worth in her because of all the second house energy, right? Because she was like one of the biggest opera singers at the time, right? And of course he was charming, and he called her the Greek goddess in Greece and so on and so forth. Again, what I saw in the videos. So it's this, right? And depends what's going on with her self-worth, right? If it's low, that's kind of what hooked her, okay, is really, really what it is here. So, she kind of held on to that. And that's the unfortunate situation here, is really, really what it is, okay? So it's this. And, it's interesting. This is another thing here that I'm just noticing, because I was like, when I first looked at it, when I thought he was maybe a Scorpio moon, I was like, oh, why isn't he obsessed with her? Because if he was a Scorpio moon and she's a Scorpio rising, he would have been obsessed with her, right? But it's not that. That's basically what's going on with that. Now, another thing that I notice in a lot of these situations, let's say it's like one of these toxic relationships where the person like almost loses themselves, okay, for the other person, is when Lilith is involved as well, okay? And you'll see this also in affairs, especially if it's Lilith, Mars, Lilith, Venus. If it's Lilith, Venus, this is actually what happened with her, okay? So in this particular case, if we look at the energies here, his Lilith in Taurus here is trining her Venus in Capricorn, okay? And that's why she started to lose all her money, is really what it is, okay? Or like not sign those gigs and so on and so forth. In combinations with all these other things that I mentioned, if you see Lilith, Venus, Lilith, Mars, also another affair indicator. Hidden relationship, taboo relationship, especially if Lilith, Venus is involved. The person whose Venus is being affected by the other person's Lilith, they're willing to, let's say if it's a man, he might spend all his money on the woman, okay? In this case for her, she's not, working anymore, okay? She's focused on him. Like, it's like Lilith takes over. The struggle with Lilith is that it takes over to the extent where it's ruthless, the energy, right? It's not like Pluto. It's not like there's regeneration. It's like it will come through like the tornado and literally leave all the debris, and you're kind of left there to try to pick up the pieces for yourself. So it depends what's going on within the person internally. Again, their self-worth, like, how strong are they as an individual if Lilith is involved in these relationships, okay? And for those of you who are listening and tuning into these videos, if you feel that intense pull, maybe check for these energies first before you get involved with the other person, okay? Especially before you get involved with them sexually. But obviously you guys have the free will to do what you want, okay? And then from her side, there's also Lilith, okay? Lilith is aspecting his Mercury, okay? Lilith is aspecting his Venus too, okay? So trines here because her Lilith is in Taurus, okay? So it's trining his Mercury, it's trining his Venus, so same thing. I don't know, if there's more to the story here, if something happened when they got together and maybe he also potentially lost money. I think from what I heard in one of the videos, you guys again are gonna have to watch this to double check, but I think I heard that he gave her money or something like that. Like there's something going on there, okay, with that. And then also, okay, her Lilith sextiles his Mars, so it's happening on both sides, right? The missing factor here, okay, from this to have ever progressed into anything else, okay, other than the taboo hidden relationship and, for it to not have been unrequited love is, okay, the moon on his side. And also, let's say if they both had Venus, Neptune, let's say taking place to each other's, Venuses, right? Like Neptune from each other's Neptune to the other person's Venus, maybe it would have been a different story, okay? But again, for him, personally, based off of my analysis here and what I'm seeing here, and just, again, looking at his picture and the vibe that he kind of gives off, just like when I hook into it, I just feel like he just wanted to see if he could get her. That's really what I feel like took place here, unfortunately, and she got hooked. Unfortunately, is really, really what it is, and it's really, really sad, the story in the end, that she literally ended up dying of a broken heart. So let's see what happens in another lifetime, okay, if these two are going to reincarnate. But yes, basically the story is unfinished here, loose ends, so on and so forth, which then is going to trigger another reincarnation loop, okay, is really what it is. So that's the thing here, you know, especially when Lilith is involved. Lilith is the destroyer, right? So you have to have like, you know, a lot of strength internally, okay, to not get, first of all, sucked into these dynamics, to even have the awareness about them, to know yourself, right? This is why astrology is really good, because you can see these things early on. And if you see any of these combinations that I mentioned in this video today, okay, obviously you guys have the free will to do what you want, but maybe try not to engage in these types of dynamics, because more often than not, again, you know, if that Uranus energy is involved, maybe 12 house synastry, maybe Neptune to Venus, like in this particular case, it's going to be hidden, okay, and then the Saturn prolonged it, right? So that's the thing. That's kind of what I have for you guys here. So I'm going to wrap up this video here, okay, on Mariacallas and Aristotle Onassis, okay? Such, you know, interesting names. Like, you know, these names just like fit these characters. You know what I mean? Like, it's like they couldn't have been anybody else. I hope that makes sense. Like, it's like very unique names. Anyways, so with that being said, I'm going to wrap up this video here. I hope you guys enjoyed my reading here on these two individuals, the Synastry reading. If you did, please do like, share, and subscribe. If you guys would like your own reading, okay, so natal chart reading, progress natal chart reading, Synastry reading, mini natal chart, mini Synastry reading, send me an email, and I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your day.